changed the title last night, and the original was The Present, The Progress and The Potential. But as I started kind of writing this, I thought we kind of need to look back at where we started with the web and some of the sort of cringe-worthy moments that we've had, like this. Has anybody seen this video?
I have not.
The Windows 95 launch.
Oh, no.
If you get a chance to have a look at the video, it's horrible. So yeah, let's go back to where it all started, basically.
I think they were just pleased to get a bit out from behind the desk.
It literally was, yeah. They got a bit of music and they probably had a beer and they were off.
Yeah.
So what we had to deal with in the 90s, and most of you might know the 90s, some maybe not. So hands up, just to get an idea who's in the room. Who had to deal with dial-up modems? Rory, you're too young. So we all know the pain.
The noise that it would
The noise.
Yeah.
Your mum went on the phone and it disconnected you. So this whole world of online access that's just 24/7 is fairly new still. Who remembers having to install the internet?
They used to always get the free trials. Like
Free trials, AOL
CDs
CDs come through. That's where we used to be.
They make excellent videos.
They do. What else? Encarta 95.
Yeah.
Wikipedia on a CD.
I know.
That's what we had. This is basically the source of every person's homework
Yeah.
from 95 to whenever Google made its appearance in early 2000s. Floppy disks. So when I started building websites, a floppy disk was just about the right size to put a whole website on. Purely for the fact there wasn't any images in it. But that was what we used to work with. Solitaire, Minesweep and Pinball. So if your internet wasn't working, this was life on the computers, right? Does anyone know why these were created?
No.
So the idea was Microsoft basically to teach you how to use computers, really. So Solitaire was to teach you how to click and drag, pull things across the screen. Minesweep was to learn how to right-click and how to do that. I think Pinball was just for fun, actually. I don't think there was, and it was pretty, pretty fantastic. So let's appreciate where we were. So there's no time like the present. And I think it's just good to get that perspective on where we are now, because actually, we've come a very long way in a fairly short space of time. How far have we come? We've achieved a huge amount, basically. I think from those early Stone Age years, what we've done now, what we've achieved, is it's unreal, basically. Streaming, TV, film, music, this was just unheard of before. I mean, it used to take a good 5-10 minutes to download a single song, let alone stream something in high quality. And I think this is shaping society in some ways. A lot of the younger generation now are consuming TV shows and things like that through the internet constantly. I mean, most of us probably do to some level as well. Shopping, another massive industry change. I don't know if it's probably more or less at the moment in terms of from the high street to online what the purchasing is, but again, massive, absolutely massive. Education, another big thing. There's a lot of courses online. That's for us in a digital industry, development wise, if you've got a question, you can literally type it into 5 or 6 decent websites and get an answer within seconds. Software, again, you used to have to install really heavy bits of kit on your computers. AOL back in the day, and big suites of CDs that used to 4 or 5 different CDs just to install a bit of software. Whereas now, a lot of it's online. I don't want to ruin the rest of the talk, but it's going that way. Um, banking and digital. I'm not sure why it's a big space. Digital currency. Very much at the early stages of digital currency. But again, you can start to see where the future lies with web and the capacity that this has got. So in stark contrast to that first slide, dial up, installing the internet, this is where we are at the moment. And we're just going to continue to keep rocketing basically. So what is this all built on? So for me, and this is what we do, and I think this is where the future of the internet is going to go, web apps. So applications via the web. And I'm probably going to ruin my next slides quite easily as well. So what is a web application? Essentially, it's a high functioning website. So the majority of things you see nowadays could be classified as a web app. Anything with forms are potentially the kind of sort of the blurry lines between a website and an application. But anything that's really kind of driving some sort of process, really. I think that's where, for me, that's the distinction. I think I've literally written that one sentence twice again in a different format. So software access for a browser. So it's not something you have to install onto your computer. It's accessible everywhere. It's via any browser that you want to pick up. Yeah, and again, I've rewritten the same sentence. An online application, basically. I won't expand on that. So what are the benefits of web applications over traditional software? Access from anywhere, I've just spoke that. So I think this is one of the biggest points, really, of having that cloud access that we're all sort of very familiar with now. There was, the day where people used to come around and sell you software and pretty much bring a computer with them, and that was the PC that you installed that software on. And if someone else needed to use it, they had to come and use your machine. So I think those days are probably not too, there probably are still people working in that way now. But I think the online access now just kind of breaks it up massively. Always up to date, so every time you access the website, you're getting the latest version of whatever software you're accessing, basically. And again, to the good old days of installing CDs, you had to go and buy the next CD. There's a kind of an area where you'd be able to download updates and things, but again, you'd be talking 500-600 megabytes up to a gigabyte sometimes for updates, and it was quite heavy stuff. I've just spoiled it again. Yeah, hard drive space again was a big thing. We're in a position now where we've got cloud storage and we can kind of utilise so much more space. Whereas before you'd buy a hard drive and most of the time you'd fill that up, and over time that would be the thing that kind of slowed down your computer, basically. So I think the fact that we can use the web now just frees up a lot of stuff as well, so we can kind of get a little bit more speed out of things. So we have all been using web apps. It's very much part of our daily life, really, to a certain extent. Microsoft 365 and G Suite are probably the more conventional ones, I think. So again, the Microsoft Office suite has been, it's kind of underpinned every office in the country and the world for a very long time. That's all now available online, and again, access to anybody from anywhere, and I think that's a big improvement. And I mean, we use G Suite. Again, it's exactly the same thing. I presented this. I produced this presentation using the Google Slides. Worked on my laptop. Had to pick it up on the phone on the train on the way into work. Desktop. It's all just there. It's all real fluid experience. Basecamp, Jira, Trello, InVision, Asana, all brilliant web applications. I'm sure some of you use them for project management and all sorts of things. And Xero, Sage, I'm sure there's others. So sort of the banking side of things, bookkeeping, these are massive advances. And again, I've worked in places where there was an accountancy desk, and that's where the software was installed. and people physically had to come around and install the updates, and that's how the world worked. And now it's just done its own mess. So, how do we progress? Bit of a grainy gift, that one, but who's the new kid on the block? That's for you, that one. I did get a little bit nostalgic with all my little GIFs and images over the last week or so. So for me, the big step forward now is progressive web apps. So the web application side of things is very much done, and we're finding different ways of using that technology. The next step forward for me is the progressive stuff. So I'm going to spoil it again, so I'll work through this. So what's progressive about them? So again, they're always up to date, as any online application. What's new now is we've got some offline access. So progressive web apps are basically going to start competing with native apps. So your Apple devices, Android apps, Microsoft apps, all the different spin-offs of all these different apps. This is where I think the web is going to start taking over from there as well. So offline access is one of the big points to that. Full screen capabilities, and they're browserless. So essentially they are websites, but you can get a browserless experience. So it starts to again blur the lines between native apps and websites. Push notifications. So again, part of the experience that you get with native apps is having that continued experience and people drawing you back into using the app. Obviously, with websites, that's not always been the case. With progressive, that becomes a reality, and you can start to extend that experience for people. I've got installable because you don't really install these, but you kind of save a link to the web application. But they give you the facility to have an icon on your desktop or your phone, wherever you want to try and install it. And you get a splash screen, so that again that experience feels very native. It feels like an application. So how is this achieved? So it's a little bit techie, not overly techie because there's more qualified people in the room to teach you this. So there's 3 different levels, and I'll brush over these very quickly. So we've got a manifest. So these are an additional level on top of the traditional web applications. So this will allow you to select the icon that you want to show on your phone, what you want to use on the splash screen, your colours, orientation, all these sort of things. Service workers are the things that kind of run it all, but in the behind the scenes, sorry, and they will look after your push notifications and all the kind of clever stuff behind there. And for some reason, they all need to be secure as well. So that's just again part of what I think is a big step and a big hurdle for web applications is the security side of things as well. So what are the benefits? So their websites, they're super quick. They have to be. Everything we try to build on the web is super quick, super lightweight, and you kind of benefit from that. So if you're launching a progressive web app or PWA from your phone, because you're just literally loading the website, you've got a small cache there, it's sitting there, it's ready. As soon as you download that to your phone, it's there. There's no kind of 30, 40 megabyte download, it's just there. And that's because it's lightweight. So you've got about a 50 megabyte cache that you can use on mobile devices. But again, if you've got a 50 megabyte website you're trying to download, then it's not going to be very good. So again, you're going to be really, really stripped back, really lightweight. This for me is the absolute biggest benefit, and why I think web applications are going to skyrocket in the next few years, because it is a single platform. So you can achieve a hell of a lot of functionality through a web application. And what it means is that you don't have to build an iOS app, you don't have to build an Android app or something with Windows, or an iPad or an iPhone, or the multitude of devices you've got out there at the moment. You can build one single platform and it's responsive because it's a website. And I think this as a cost saving exercise and maintenance and everything else is a no-brainer ultimately. There are some hardware restrictions at the moment, but again, I think over time, as that starts to loosen and the security side of things comes into play, we'll just see that just fly. And again, I've ruined that. Responsive. So website, it's going to fit any screen. So iPad, iPhone, different sizes, desktop, big screen, whatever you want, it can be responsive. And I think, again, scalability wise, that counts for a lot. So examples you can start having a look at now and start to save a bit of space in your phone, or just kind of get an experience and compare against the existing iOS apps and Android apps. Google Maps. So Google are a big player in pushing forward PWAs, along with Microsoft. Apple are the ones that are kind of holding it up a little bit, and again, I think probably partly through security, partly because they can't monetize it as much. So there's a bit of a delay. So Google Maps is a really good one. Their original PWA was a little bit awkward. The experience wasn't great. They've got a new one, I think it's Google Maps Go, that is a lot better. And ultimately you don't really see the difference between the native app and the web app. Twitter Lite. So this is a good example of a lightweight app. So I think the main native app is around 25-30 megabytes. The Twitter Lite was about 50 kilobytes, I think. And again, experience-wise, it was very similar. And again, over time, that will will just improve. So you can start to see if you replaced 90% of your apps on your phone, you're going to find that you've got a lot more free space to take photos of cats. Uber. I've not tried Uber, but they've got one. Instagram, again, a little bit limited, but generally I think if you're comparing, you can see the differences. If you're just using the web app, you're probably not going to notice that too much. And this is a really good one, app.ft.com. So it's basically their news feed, and this one works really well on desktop as well. So in Chrome on desktops, you can change some settings in the configuration to allow you to see progressive web apps and install them onto your desktop, and that's a really good one to kind of see. And again, it launches technically the website, but it's browserless, so you've just got a thin banner around the application itself, so you wouldn't really know that it wasn't a normal desktop application. And again, I think in terms of use cases, you're going to find that having that, we've built scheduling systems and project management tools before, and having that as something you can launch from your desktop and open up as a real app, or that sense, carries a lot of weight, and it opens up more opportunities because it's cost effective to develop via the web. So where can you access? So access to progressive web apps at the moment, again, it's a bit of a mixed bag really. So if you're on an Android device, access is fairly easy. You can go to a website, you get a pop-up that says install the app, you say yes, and it pings up on your phone. Apple is a little bit more difficult. So if you're aware, you can save a website as a bookmark or like a shortcut on your phone. It's essentially that process. It's a little bit clunky at the moment, but again, once Apple allow us to prompt you with notifications within the browser, then that will again shorten that experience. I've probably ruined this again. Right, so Google Play Store, again, Google are pushing this, so they're available in the Play Store, same as the Windows App Store. So they're now being categorised alongside native apps, which is a big bonus. So you've got the sort of normal experience. People are going to look for apps. That's where they're going to go and search. But again, I think that experience is going to change because people are going to be targeting certain services. So you're going to know you're going to a website, and then the app's going to be presented to you there, rather than you going to search for the very specific thing that you didn't know existed until someone just told you about it. So I think these two both have a part to play in that. AppScope is a very good one. So that's purely PWA, and their app is actually a progressive web app as well, which is helpful. So that's a really good place to start seeing some things in there. And there's games, there's all sorts of things going on. And yeah, again, websites. So if you've got a very specific application and you're driving people to a certain place on your website, then you can present them with that pop-up after a period of time. Pops up saying, do you want to add this to your site, to your homepage? Say yes, and it's there within seconds. So again, I think over time that experience and people adopting the web apps will become easier. So it's not perfect just yet.
Can I ask what is probably a really obvious question to everyone in the room? But when you're talking about these web apps, is it like you said, you've got Office 365, so we were all used to installing it on our desktop, and now it's moved to the cloud. Now what you're saying is you can have an app for it on your desktop and your phone, and it'll function in the same way?
Yes, essentially, yeah. Yeah, got it. So when I talk about applications, they can be as sort of complex as Microsoft Word online and all those sort of things. But actually, there's an opportunity now where you can take a small process that you've got in-house and make that digital, make it automated, and use things like Microsoft, or plug yourself into Xero. You can create little micro applications that you can use either personally within inside a business or to engage with people outside the business. So I think this is where the good opportunities are to use this application. Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for us was we'd get people ask us for apps for events. One-off things. And you say, well, an iPhone app is X amount. If you want it on Android or iPad, the costs keep going up, and it's hard to justify that cost for something that's one-off. And I think this sits nicely in that space as a solution to that, because it can be scaled down really well. The expertise, aren't as kind of in demand as iOS developers and Android and things like that. So it can be done at a reasonable cost, potentially. So what's the potential? And I've used this GIF again because we're still waiting for that. So what lies in store for the web? I've realised I've probably ruined a lot of this again, but super connected and super powerful. So what I think is going to then give us the platform to deliver all the stuff I've just been waffling on about. 5G. So I was speaking to someone the other week that's testing it in the UK at the moment, and they said it's ridiculous. So we're looking at, if I can remember off the top of my head, 10 gigabits a second download. So at the moment, I think 4G is around 100 megabits. You correct me if I'm wrong here. I feel like you're going to know more than me on this one. It's something like that.
No idea.
It's I think it was ridiculous amount faster. These are sort of theoretical maximums, but so as a comparison, I think if you're looking back at something like 3G, which is fairly common still, to download a full-length HD film was about a day. 5G was about 4 to 40 seconds, something like that. And 4G is still around 7 minutes, which, to be fair, is still pretty good. Dial-up, you wouldn't even bother starting. It's just not worth it. So I think that's going to give us the opportunity to use the web applications in a much broader way, and have access to a lot more things. Wi-Fi 6, again, it's quicker. There's a lot more access to to use more broadband, but I think essentially the biggest part of this, and I'll flick on this on, and Bluetooth 5, they are both a lot quicker than their predecessors, but what they actually achieve is allowing you to connect more devices, and having that kind of broader range within your network, basically. And I think this is where the benefit lies. So you've got super fast, but you've also got super connected. And then what I think this will do, so I think on average, I think it's around 7 to 9 devices connected to any one kind of router or Bluetooth network or something like that. But I think they estimate in the next couple of years it'd be around 50 devices per household or office or whatever that is. So when you start thinking about, connected fridges and God knows what else, all your lights and your home devices, your Alexas and all that sort of stuff, this is where that starts to play a big part in this. And this again is all powered by the web and applications and that kind of thing. So this is kind of the fuel to the fire, I think, moving forward. Processor farms, this is where the powerful part comes in. So where I see there's a little bit, I guess, of a lag in terms of some software. So if you consider video editing, you're going to need a lot of processing power for that. That's something that's not going to be doable on the web anytime soon to a certain extent. Again, I may be wrong, I'm not in the industry, but ultimately what I think we can achieve, and this, you've had render farms for years already, is basically outputting your processing power. So if we're using an application online for video editing, let's say, and you want to render that to a final cut, then you can basically send that request and it'll ping it out to a processor farm, and there'll be 1,000 computers that will take 1,000th of the time each to basically do that bit of work for you and send the thing back to you. It'll be lightning quick, over 5G, using your Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth if you want to connect something up somehow. So I think we've got the speed to achieve that, and we've the distributed power of processing to achieve the actual workload as well. So I don't see at certain stage there won't be any boundaries, any restrictions on what we can actually achieve with software online. And then we've got quantum computing, so that's like just super duper quick. There was a testing machine that they've set up. I don't even understand it. I'm not going to go into it, but when we start making things even more speedy and powerful, and we can use all these other things to interact with that, it's just I don't know where it's going to go at all. It's just going to be amazing. Although we'll probably just fill it up like we normally do. We get 4G and we start streaming 4K videos. If we get 5G, we'll probably stream the internet. I don't know. We always fill it up, so it doesn't matter. But so what we would do with this? So this is where I start seeing this all connecting in terms of our interaction with the web and the apps and all these kind of things. Browser-driven devices. So we've already got them available nowadays. We've got the Chromebooks that are literally just browsers. You boot it up really, really quick because you're just opening a browser, and everything you do is through Chrome. So that's heavily reliant on web applications. Obviously, G Suite being the key one there. That's already there. Windows have just brought out or are bringing out a similar version to that. So just literally just web app driven machines. And I think this is where I see the future being, because in this kind of big corporate world, a lot of the sort of network setups are dummy terminals, and all the software's delivered from their network in their servers, and you literally just log on and there's nothing on the computer really. It's just fed the applications from the server. It's that same model, but we're just putting it cloud based. But we've got the facility to serve that now. So every device that we've got, whether it's a laptop, a desktop, phone, tablet, fridge, mirror, in-car, whatever it's going to be, these are just going to be browser-driven devices. They're just screens. That's all they're going to be. We don't really need the processing power behind them like we've got traditionally. We don't need these big, powerful computers. It's just not necessary. We don't need the space. We don't need the file storage because it's on the cloud. There's no big files to install because it's on the cloud. So you can start to see we've got all this speed, all this power, and we've just got all these devices connected, and they can all work really well together because they're connected really well. So I think this is the big one for me. This is where I see the future, as it were. Device hardware. So in an odd way, I think hardware is going to become less important because we can start to farm that out. But there are certain things where we do interact. So progressive web apps at the moment can't look at your fingerprints or your face recognition to unlock things and bits and pieces like that. But again, that's something that's being worked on, so that will become available. Again, just start to blur the lines between native and web, to the point where I don't think we're going to need native. I think it's a way off. I think there's still applications for it now, high-end games and things like that, where the device itself and the hardware, the processors, it's still going to happen. But again, over time, I think that will disappear. I've ruined that again. Cars, fridges, mirrors, home automation. Again, I'm not going to say it because I'm probably written that next, but I see this all just being connected. You know, I'd love a world where we can just log into something and all of our stuff is just there. And that is available, that is there. I think it's very fragmented still at the moment. So a perfect example for me at the moment is Slack. I don't know if anyone uses Slack. So desktop version of it, phone version of it, there's a web version as well. So if I go onto my desktop, I can add a new channel and can start talking to people. So if I go to my phone, that channel's not there. And for me, that's a real bugbear because I can't stand having to do that again. But if I just use the web version, it's always there, it's always up to date. So there's no reason why I can't log into any machine, log into an account that's got access to all of my things. And that kind of one point of access, for me, makes sense. And, you know, I think with TVs as well in this situation, having access to your Netflix, your Spotify, or your Google Docs, or your software, it doesn't matter what the device is that's presenting that information to you. It can be anywhere. So you've got a really low point of entry cost for building an application, and that can work across any one of these things because it's browser based, it's just web. And I think that, you know, as an application can just cover so many things, it really can. I didn't spoil it. Voice was going to be my other thing as well. I'm sure I've written that next. Web, VR and AR. These, again, it's not my expertise, but I know there's a lot going on in the world of VR and AR. And the web as a driving force is catching up to that. And trying to hopefully take it out of the sort of the gimmicky world that it's in a little bit at the moment. And yeah, again, speaking to someone a few weeks ago, they're really pushing that kind of web application of this sort of thing. So again, you're not going to need the hardware of your device, whatever it is, to power this sort of thing. So hopefully we'll start to just not develop backwards a little bit more and move something more unified, basically. Oh, I didn't write voice. Okay. And then this blows my mind a little bit. The decentralized web, or Web 3.0. Still not 100% sure if that's the same thing or if they're two different things. Really interesting to read about it. I think we're kind of in there at the moment. I don't think it's quite been realised. And ultimately, sort of the potential of that, and when we officially believe that we're in Web 3.0, it is probably a few years away yet. But the kind of stuff I've been reading about this is the sort of decentralised part is basically taking back a bit of ownership, taking our content back and using ourselves as the middle ground, really, and focusing on taking the power away from, you know, the big people like Facebook and Google to a certain extent, Instagram, all of our information, we're just kind of collecting that back in. And there's sort of decentralised apps that people are working on. It's a little bit beyond me still. But I think the Internet of Things and all these devices is going to start to play a much bigger part in that as well. Yeah, definitely worth looking at and reading into. You probably know more than me within minutes. But yeah, really interesting. And I think all of this stuff with the tools that we've got, and knowing how far we've come from dial-up to where we are now in 20, 25 years, you know, give it another 5, 10, 15 years, and God knows where we're going to be. Yeah, so that's why I think the web's the right thing to do. Is that the end? No. It's really ruined this. I need to see it on there before. Right, so trends. So one of the things that I've seen in years gone by was back in early 2000s, maybe a little bit after that, was the conversation people had with, as a business, so you need a website. If your business isn't online, you're going to lose business, you need a website. Then 5-10 years later, you need to make your website mobile responsive. If it's not mobile responsive, people aren't going to come to you, they're going to go somewhere else. The next step on, web apps. If your business doesn't have an app or a process that's automated, and you're basically using whiteboards or paper-based systems or whatever that might be, if you're not using an application of some sort to automate your business or engage with people or whatever that might be, this is where you need to start changing, I think. So website was first, then everyone went mobile. I think the next thing is application-driven stuff. And I've not even touched on learning from the information you can learn and capture using applications, similar to sort of the Hotjar stuff. You know, if people are using your systems, whether it's internally or customer-based, if people are using information and going through your systems, you can learn from them. And I think that's a whole another thing, and UX-led and business-led as well. I think there's a lot of value in that. I need right voice. Yeah, voice obviously is always already become a massive part of that, and I continue to. I think it's going to just get bigger and bigger, really. Yeah, and I think sort of interfaceless is another big part of that. I think there's still going to be that kind of visual. We're going to need to see things and search for something using Alexa, but then get shown some sort of visual of what that is. I think there's friction between purchasing and that kind of thing as well. That's going to reduce a lot, and I think voice is going to play a big part in that. And yeah, just kind of a general thing, really. I think we're very much a subscription society already. We subscribe to everything all the time. It's all, account based. And I kind of wish that at some point we can just subscribe to one thing and just tailor it just to pick off bits and pieces that we want, rather than having to get Netflix and I can't think the other ones. Netflix. Yeah. Just to get all the different versions of the shows you want to watch, and keep the kids happy, because something's not on that and on the other one, so you have to sign up to that. So I think the subscription-based thing again falls really well into the application side of things, and that model of investment and development, I think, as well. And I think this is where we can start to realise the potential of a lot of this. I think that's it now. Yeah, thank you.